Part 17. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 161. Chen Wenqin finally chose to find Aaron to borrow troops. There is no way, relying on one's own strength, there is really no way to compete with the New World. But Aaron's conditions were unacceptable to him. Qian Liliang, I'll give you the whole manga, what will I get? Chen Wenqin looked at Aaron opposite him angrily. We all belong to the Sci-fi gang, so why are we different from each other? Aaron said with a smile. This time Chen Wenqin came to ask for help, which made him overjoyed. Finally, he had a reason to fight with the New World. He still hasn't forgotten the revenge, and such a big rocket passed by him. In the name of winning over manga, the old guys agreed to start a war with the New World. The Sci-fi gang has also coveted manga for a long time, and I believe they will not disagree. This time there was a reason to intervene. Chen Wenqin was still a little unwilling to accept it, and he was ready to become a corner leader at first sight. However, New World actually interfered, and the Sci-fi gang even wanted to interfere. Aaron seemed to have seen through Chen Wenqin's thoughts. Brother, what's the future of being a corner leader in a small place? Only on the big stage of the Sci-fi gang can you and I use our talents. Aaron continued to confuse. Don't worry, as long as we can capture manga and let you manage it, how about it? Chen Wenqin frowned slightly. I'm afraid there is no other way now, but there are still some countermeasures. These big gangs often do things like killing donkeys. Okay, but you have to give me a batch of arms. After all, I have a lot of people. I can't just kill people with knives, right? Aaron thought about it and agreed to Chen Wenqin's request. It was okay to use more cannon fodder to consume the younger brothers in the New World. When Chen Wenqin saw that Aaron agreed, the corners of his mouth curved. After the two agreed, Chen Wenqin returned to manga to make preparations. Even if he later merged with the Sci-fi gang, he would still have a group of loyal younger brothers. At the same time, Li Qing also received news that the Sci-fi gang was about to intervene. Of course, the news was revealed by Chen Wenqin's younger brother. Li Qing had already sent people to put a nail in Chen Wenqin's side. His every move was reported to the New World. Li Qing squinted to sort out the thoughts in his mind. Dongziu, how many of the people in Haobaikuo work in our taxi company? In his taxi company, there are people from Mioka and Haobaikuo, but he really doesn't know how many people there are. Zhang Dongziu thought for a while. There are fewer people than at the entrance of the temple. People related to Haobaikuo probably account for about 1/3 of the members of Haobaikuo. After appraising the proportions, Li Qing knocked on the table and thought deeply. Dongziu, let the monk do this. He whispered, and Zhang Dongziu next to him listened carefully and nodded from time to time. After everything was arranged, Li Qing lit a cigarette. It's time to win manga. The legislators will vote in a week. Li Qing murmured softly. Night falls, in an old warehouse in the back wall. Chen Wenqin couldn't help but get excited when he looked at the boxes of pistols and bullets sent by the Sci-fi gang. With these things, what is the New World? They all have one head and one life, no one is worse than the other. Ami, how many guns are there in these? Chen Wenqin asked his little brother. Brother, I roughly calculated that there should be more than 100 in SI, and Ami looked at the box and calculated silently. Chen Wenqin took out a pistol from the box, and the pistol suddenly made an empty chamber sound. Well, that's right. Send it to the younger brothers so that they can get familiar with it. Tomorrow, people from the Sci-fi gang will enter manga, and we must be prepared. This time, I want to see what is used to block the temple entrance. Chen Wenqin smiled sinisterly. He had already planned to quickly capture the entrance to the temple, and before New World had time to react, he immediately announced that it would merge with the Sci-fi gang. In this way, if we attack manga again in the New World, the difficulty will undoubtedly be much higher. Then he took advantage of the conflict between the New World and the Sci-fi gang and tried to please them on both sides. He asked them to set up a tang in manga, and divided manga between them. It was better than being a dog to the Sci-fi gang. When Ami next to him heard this, his pupils shrank slightly and he responded quickly. He quickly arranged for manpower to start distributing pistol bullets. They didn't leave until late at night. Ami dragged his tired body home and saw his wife happily preparing dinner. Just do it casually. Ami hugged his wife from behind and said distressedly. Oh, my son came back from the company today, and of course he has to make delicious food. The wife continued happily, I just called me. My son said that his salary this month was more than 10,000 yuan, and the most important thing is that he also has a bonus. When Ami heard this, the muscles in his hands tightened. Yes, his son is 18 years old and works for a taxi company in the same city. In other words, we are working for the New World. He didn't know what would happen to others if he exposed the New World this time, but their connected households would definitely be fired. The family that has just started to improve will return to that kind of struggling life. A sudden knock on the door woke up Ami, who was deep in thought. Go forward and open the door. Brother me. Brother me. Ami took a look and found that the people who came to see him were all in the same situation as him. Someone in his family worked for the New World Passenger Transport Company. A group of people were smoking cigarettes in the hall. Brother me, come up with an idea. My brother can now get thousands of dollars back every month. Yes, so does my wife. Although the job of cleaning cars is very hard, the boss never withholds wages. My brother is a taxi driver, and he makes more money in a week than I do in a month. Everyone's gossip made Ami feel confused. On one side was his son's job, and on the other side was his older brother. How should he choose? In the end, family affection overwhelmed loyalty, and he decided to leak the news. Dad, who's here? Hearing his son's voice, Ami raised his head happily. But the expression on his face was shocked. There was a burly man standing next to his son. Dad, this is our general manager, who came to visit us specially. As soon as Zhang Dongzia walked into the door, he fanned the smoke, and saw the people sitting in a circle, and smiled in surprise. Hello, my name is Zhang Dongzia. Can we talk? Ami reacted and quickly invited him into the house, then looked around the door, and closed his door after confirming that there was no one. The two walked into an empty room and talked for half an hour. Zhang Dongzia didn't eat, so he took a car and left. How is brother me? Everyone was obviously waiting for news from Ami. Ami exhaled, for the sake of my family, let's do it. The others clenched their fists when they heard this, let's do it. Isn't the purpose of being in society to make your family live a better life? Old 4, contact the others and gather with me. Mainly those whose families have someone working in the taxi company in the same city, not those who gamble or deal in drugs. Don't let the news leak out. Ami said cautiously. The one called Old 4 nodded and hurried out. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 162. New World Hall, Li Qing's office. Brother, this is what happened. Zhang Dongzia told Li Qing the news he had heard from Ami. Haha, I guessed right. You want to catch me off guard. Li Qing smiled contemptuously, tapping his fingers on the table. Okay, let's play along. We'll pretend we know nothing. Have you given instructions to the people in manga? Okay, brother. Li Qing nodded after hearing this. He was quite confident that Zhang Dongzia could do things. The monk on the other side also met with Li Zhailong. Zhailong, my brother said that he could lend a batch of arms to the temple. But it's unlikely that he would send troops directly. The monk said this at Li Qing's instruction. Now the whole manga is a house full of loopholes, and any news will spread. Li's Hailong was stunned for a moment, and the black face beside him touched Li's Hailong's arm, and he came back to his senses. Well, well, at least we have the power to protect ourselves. There is no other way. The temple is in danger now. The New World can provide a batch of arms, which can be regarded as a solution to the urgent need. The arms will be delivered in the evening. You should pay attention to receive them. The monk turned and left with Mosquito. He was afraid that he could not help but tell the truth. After all, the people present were all neighbors who had watched him grow up. He couldn't watch them die expressionlessly, because he received news that there were not only arms from the Four Seas gang on the other side, but also people from the Four Seas gang. The next day, the setting sun was like blood, as if it was announcing something. It lasted until nearly midnight, when the Haobaikuo people came to the temple quietly. Intend to take over the temple in the dead of night. But the temple was also prepared. The sentry heard the movement and took out the walkie-talkie directly. Brother Hey, the opposite side is coming. Hymian looked at the Haobaikuo people getting closer and closer, and his heart was also very nervous. Bang! I don't know whose gun went off accidentally, or whose hand was shaking, but a bullet directly hit the Haobaikuo brother. Who fired the gun? Hymian originally planned to wait until he was closer to shoot, so that he would be more sure. After all, few people in the group had touched a gun. Now the gun went off again, he had to shoot. Shoot. For a while, the sound of gunfire rang out from the temple entrance. The Haobaikuo brother on the opposite side was caught off guard, and he quickly found a cover and fired at the opposite side. For a while, the whole street was like setting off firecrackers, and it was very lively. Although the fight was lively, the casualties were not great. Some people in Haobaikuo and Mioka began to retreat quietly, but the range was not large, so they did not attract the attention of others. They all thought that they had run out of bullets and retreated to change bullets. Chen Wenqian watched the two gangs deadlocked in the street and shot at each other, knowing that he could not delay for too long, because the police would definitely come if it took too long. Go ahead, he bit his lip and said to Ami next to him. Ami. Chen Wenqian looked around, and Ami, who was supposed to be standing next to him, was gone. Brother Wenqian, brother me just went down to change the bullets. Didn't he ask him to prepare the magazine? Four Seas gang, only bullets were given, no magazines. Don't wait for him, go ahead. Chen Wenqian didn't have time to wait for Ami, and took his men to sneak towards the opposite side in the dark of night. When he came to the side gap, he fired at the people at the temple entrance. After all, the distance was close, and the hit rate of the gunmanship was greatly improved, and several brothers at the temple entrance were knocked down at once. At this time, Hymian also found Chen Wenqian on the side, picked up the only AK and swept it over. Yes, the stingy New World gave him an AK. What the hell? Chen Wenqian on the opposite side quickly squatted down and shrank his head, but his little brother was not so lucky. Several of them were shot down by Hymian's casual shooting. Rifle. Chen Wenqian didn't expect that the other side actually had a rifle. Hymian fired 3 rounds in a row, but still felt a little unsatisfied, but he had to stop because the barrel was red. It was originally a rifle, but you used it as a machine gun, which was really unbearable. Chen Wenqian had a gloomy face. Just now, many of his brothers fell down. Aaron, I hummed my wife. If you hadn't come, my brothers would have been shot. Chen Wenqian said while holding the walkie-talkie. You're talking as if you hadn't done it. Aaron's wife, Ajin, was Chen Wenqian's first love girlfriend, and he had always been upset about this matter. Aaron didn't let Chen Wenqian wait for long, and the Four Seas gang appeared quietly behind the temple entrance. The situation reversed in an instant, and the temple entrance was attacked from both sides, and several people were killed and injured at once. Brother, are we still going up? Crow excitedly leaned towards Li Cheng. Mioka was made into a mess by Sihai Gang and Hao Baikuo, and they were making dumplings for Sihai and Hao Baikuo. Just thinking about it made them excited. Don't worry, wait. Li Cheng hoped that both sides would fight evenly, and he would go down to clean up the mess. The situation was one-sided now, and they would definitely use the secret weapon he gave to Mioka. Sure enough, as Li Cheng expected, Hymian on the Mioka side was a little impatient. He fumbled with the small box next to him. Damn. If you don't use it, we in Mioka will all die here. He opened the lid of the small box and saw several grenades neatly arranged inside. This is the F-1 grenade that Li Cheng sent specially. Because it looks like a lemon, it is also called the lemon grenade. The killing radius is as high as 30 meters and it is extremely powerful. It was sent by Tian Yangsheng from Ukraine, saying that Li Cheng should throw it for fun. Li Cheng also wanted to see how powerful the grenade is. Hymian pulled out the pull ring and threw one in the direction of the Sihai Gang and one in the direction of Hao Baikuo. Boom! Two huge explosions sounded. Those who were close were directly killed, and those who were far away were also seriously injured. There was no one standing within 20 meters of the grenade landing point. Li Cheng and others saw the power of the grenade and couldn't help but smack their lips. A grenade directly killed and injured more than a dozen people. Chen Wenqin looked at the bloody scene in a daze, and his heart trembled. Am I trying to grab territory? I'm so cold, why is there a grenade opposite Chen Wenqin? A Ren's exasperated voice came from the intercom. Seeing the dead and wounded Sihai Gang brothers, Aren was also dizzy. The last time he met Li Cheng, he was bombarded by him with a rocket launcher, which was already exaggerated enough. But it was the high seas after all. This is Taiwan province, and the temple across the street dared to use grenades. It's simply crazy. Go ahead, Big Brother. Crow couldn't hold back his own power anymore and rubbed his hands. No hurry, no hurry. Dongxiu, send out the flare. Zhang Dongxiu nodded, and a red flare appeared in the air. There was a crackling sound of gunfire below, and Crow was stunned by the gunfire in the distance. What's going on? You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 163. Chen Wenqin also felt something was wrong. The bullet was fired from behind. When he came back to his senses, his face changed drastically. He saw his cronies, Ami, and some of his younger brothers charging towards him, firing cold shots at him. Some people were knocked down by cold shots from behind before they could react. In the same situation, there were some younger brothers from the Sihai Gang who followed the Sihai Gang. They secretly fired shots behind the Sihai Gang members. There was a commotion immediately, and all parties were confused. They didn't even know who was theirs. Ami, come on, betray me, Chen Wenqin yelled at Ami in the distance. Ami remained silent and just kept firing, send the signal and put on the red armband. He ordered to the younger brother behind him. Apparently they had planned this before. As soon as the red signal bounced off, all the rebels silently took out their red armbands and put them on. Li Cheng stood not far away, looking at the red flares in the sky. Crow leads people to touch them. Anyone without a red armband is an enemy. After hearing his boss's order, Crow licked his lips bloodthirstily. Brothers, let's go. Let them have a taste of our power. He picked up the bulletproof helmet and put it on his head, then rushed out with the spray gun. Mosquito and others followed closely behind. Axe bursts of gunfire rang out, like a shark suddenly breaking into a calm school of fish, making the scene even more chaotic. Crow led the New World's younger brothers like a scalpel, accurately inserting into the weak spots of the Sihai Gang. Yes, The main target this time is the Sci-fi gang. As for Chen Wenqian, he is just trying to kill rabbits. Aaron from the Sci-fi gang looked at the well-equipped New World personnel, but he still didn't know that he had fallen into a trap. He originally wanted to strike first and capture Manga. Unexpectedly, he fell into Li Qing's trick. Go, retreat quickly. The idea was good, but there were some renegade boys in the back who were firing cold shots, and they didn't dare to show their heads at all. Chen Wenqian on the other side was not feeling well either, enjoying the double attack from his younger brother and the black man. The more we fight, the fewer our own people are. Brother Wenqian, withdraw. It's too late if you don't withdraw, his subordinate said with a bloody face. Chen Wenqian gritted his teeth and said, withdraw. Because there was no movement from the Sci-fi gang on the other side, something must have gone wrong. He didn't have time to confirm it now, so he had to withdraw first and then make plans. A group of people fought and retreated. But Li Qing had already expected it and had arranged for Zhang Dongzhou to hunt down the fish that slipped through the net. Chen Wenqian and others happened to be blocked. Seeing the big man wearing an extra-large body armor, Chen Wenqian's heart skipped a beat, and he kicked his feet and rushed to the side. Gunshots rang out, and the younger brothers behind him fell to the ground one by one without enough time to react. This is to kill them all. The gun in his hand was out of bullets, and he knew that he might have to confess here tonight. Hey, big guy, give me a cigarette. Seeing that he had no hope of survival, Chen Wenqian said calmly. Bang bang. Footsteps sounded, and it was the monk who walked over. Haha, the monk didn't expect you to give me a ride. Chen Wenqian smiled. Then he said to himself, in our line of work, we would have known that this day would come a long time ago. It's a pity that my cousin's revenge can't be avenged. Chen Wenqian took the cigarette, lit it with the monk's fire, and started smoking. Monk, I actually quite admire you. You are smart and loyal. You have chosen the right path by following Li Qing. Even when a person is about to die, his words are good, but Chen Wenqian loses his crazy energy. They all call me a mad dog. If I'm not crazy, how can I get ahead and take care of my family? My cousin is called Paparazzi. He didn't have enough to eat at that time, so he snatched the steamed buns from the dog's mouth and gave it to me, but he was so hungry that he vomited in his throat. From then on, people called him Paparazzi. Chen Wenqian said his words regardless. If possible, help me keep an eye on my uncle. After all, he is old and has a broken hand. His voice became lower and lower, and his head slowly dropped. It turned out that Chen Wenqian had not completely dodged just now, and a bullet still bit him. Looking at the lifeless Chen Wenqian, the monk shook his head. They all said that Wenqian was a mad dog, but in fact he was just using his madness to protect his family. Just like what he said, there is nothing wrong with being a gangster, or you will be squatting in a miserable kill, or you will die on the streets. This is the world. The battle with the Sci-fi gang on the other side is also coming to an end, and the Sci-fi gang who has been dumped has no room to fight back. Hiding behind the wall, Ren, with blood on his face, hurriedly took out his phone and dialed a number. Minister, save me, save me. Li Qing wants to kill me. The reason why he holds a high position in the Sci-fi gang is because of this minister, who is of course also a member of the mysterious Landowners Association. And Aaron is just a minion who handles some shady things for the landlord. Aaron, come out. You're lucky if the bomb didn't kill you last time at sea. Li Qing looked at the wall where Aaron was hiding with a ferocious smile. Boss Li, don't shoot, I'll come out. A hand holding a mobile phone stretched out, and then Aaron slowly moved out. Li Qing didn't expect that he would actually dare to come out. Boss Li, there is a big boss who wants to call you. Aaron shook the phone in his hand. Li Qing's mind was spinning after hearing this. He knew that he must not answer this call. If he answered this call, he would not be able to kill Aaron. It is very likely that he is a member of the Landlord Association, and his identity may be that he knows his senior. He quietly signaled to Crow, and Crow understood and slowly walked to the side, picking up his beloved RPG under the cover of the younger brothers. "Okay, wait for me to get it." After saying that, he waved to Crow. The younger brothers quickly dodged, and saw Crow squatting and firing a rocket at Aren. Before Aren could react, he was blown to pieces, and of course his mobile phone was also broken into pieces. Li Qing watched the smoke dissipate and smiled contemptuously. "You still want to move out of the backstage to save your life, is it possible?" He didn't care who was on the other end of the phone. Aren was going to be killed, which was why he didn't answer the phone. Not answering the call is one thing, and not listening to the call is another thing. After all, the senior management pays attention to their own face. Without being told, the younger brothers of the New World began to evacuate in an orderly manner. As for cleaning the battlefield, that was the business of the temple. This situation was caused by the gunfight between Myoka and Haobaikyo. As for the grenades, they were used by Myoka and had nothing to do with New World. The police from Wanbei arrived only after all the New World brothers had evacuated. Looking at the mess of manga, the police opened their eyes wide. Was this a battle? They had only seen such scenes in war movies. After all, it was too bloody. The smell of blood mixed with the smell of gunpowder was really uncomfortable. The police chief, with a pale face, sat limply on the ground. He knew he was finished. With so many people dead, he might be dismissed. Now he had to do his best to solve the case in order to shirk his responsibility. Damn, arrest all the gangsters in Myoka and Haobaikyo. I suspect there are terrorists among them. Poor Hymian and others were arrested before they had time to bandage their wounds. At the same time, Li's Hailong got the news and hurriedly dragged his mother to the dock. If he didn't leave, the police would arrive. In Thailand, at least he could survive with his father's savings. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 164. At least he was a little smart. He didn't use the boat prepared by New World, nor did he go to the Philippines as planned. Instead, he found a smuggling boat to Thailand through Myoka's relationship. He had already made 2 preparations. If Myoka won, there would be no problem. If he lost, neither Chen Wenkin nor New World would let him go. "Hurry up, start the boat," Li's Hailong said to the fisherman wearing a peaked cap. The fisherman pulled down the brim of his hat and started to drive the boat away. After that, New World began to set up a hall in manga and transferred some of its younger brothers to manga. Now manga is dead, injured, and some have been arrested by the police. There is no way to stop New World from entering. Li Qing thought about how to solve the problem of the Four Seas gang. If he fought, it would not work, but he was afraid that the action would be too big. If he was regarded as a terrorist, it would be terrible. But the Four Seas gang lost so many people, and there was no reaction, which was really a bit abnormal. Rather than waiting, it is better to attack directly. Li Qing directly asked Crow to sweep all the territories of the Four Seas gang in the Ximending business district. Strangely, except for sporadic resistance, there seemed to be no reaction. "Brother, the deputy leader of the Four Seas gang, Tianwei, is here," Zhang Dongzia whispered in Li Qing's ear. "Tianwei? Let him in." A middle-aged man in a suit and leather shoes walked in. "Haha, Mr. Li, I have heard a lot about you." "Mr. Tian, nice to meet you." The two shook hands and were modest to each other. Crow standing next to him kept muttering in his heart, a sound, "This meeting is not to say tit for tat, but also to have a war of words, how come it is so hot?" In Crow's white eyes, the two began a long verbal game, talking about everything from hot pot in Hong Kong to oyster omelets in Wanbei, from the fabric of suits to the brand of shirts. Alas, just don't get down to business. Just when Wu Yao was about to fall asleep, Tian Wei cleared his throat. "Mr. Li, our gang leader said that Ren is not one of ours. It was not our order for him to do things in Hong Kong, so we will consider the banknote making disc as a gift to Mr. Li." Li Qing sneered in his heart, "Damn, it's as if you can take it back. It seems that there are many factions within the Four Seas gang. In fact, we still have room for cooperation. I heard that Mr. Li has a gambling boat." Tian Wei didn't finish his words, but his meaning was already very clear. But Li Qing just didn't take it up. There are already 3 shares of the gambling boat. If there is one more share, regardless of whether Li Qing agrees or not, the other 2 will definitely not be happy. "I have no problem. This boat belongs to 3 parties. As long as you can deal with Tiandao League and Xinji, it is not impossible for the 4 parties to share the profits." When Tian Wei heard Li Qing's words, the smile on his face disappeared. "This is impossible. At least Tiandao League will not agree. They are all in Taiwan, and everyone is just friendly on the surface. In that case, I won't bother Mr. Li anymore. There will be opportunities for cooperation in the future." The Four Seas gang didn't mention the Ximending Twadi at all. They knew that what New World had swallowed up could not be returned. If they force it, friction will inevitably arise. The main reason is that the Four Seas gang's business does not care much about the size of the territory, so they don't care much about the territory. Li Qing also stood up to see him off, looking at Tian Wei's back. "If it's a banknote making business, it's not that we can't cooperate. After all, there are still some anti-counterfeiting measures on the current US dollar that have not been cracked. Brother, what is he doing here?" Wu Ya scratched his head, thinking that the other party had said a lot, but he didn't understand what he was doing here. Submission and show of goodwill. Li Qing smiled lightly. Anyone with a discerning eye can see that the fight in manga was openly and secretly participated by New World. Just by looking at that large amount of arms, we know that New World is not simple. Speaking of arms, Li Qing remembered Tian Yangshen's letter. They have contacted their former boss. But regarding the arms trade, their former boss hoped that he would have time to go for a face-to-face meeting. It seems that after Taiwan is stable, he will have to go to Ukraine again. New World is moving quickly. Ami is leading the way in manga, and both Haobaikuo and Mioka have no objections. Directly merge into New World and start to take action against all the small gangs in manga. Those who are willing will be directly merged into New World, and those who are unwilling will be directly destroyed. It only took 2 days for the entire manga to be beaten into a single state by New World. However, a series of frequent actions by New World also caused dissatisfaction among some senior officials. "Minister Ho called me. Tell me the truth, did you participate in the manga incident? You dared to use grenades. Do you really think Taiwan is the Middle East?" Minister Ho's voice came from the phone, with a very obvious questioning tone. Li Qing raised his eyebrows when he heard this. "Minister Ho, a criminal killed someone with a knife. Instead of punishing the criminal, you questioned the person who sold the knife. This is not good. The implication is that I just sold some arms to them. As for what they used it for, I don't know." Minister Ho on the other side was silent for a moment. "The election for legislators is about to start. Don't make trouble during this period, otherwise I can't control it. The boss is already very angry." After saying that, he hung up the phone. Li Qing sneered. He suspected that the big man in Ren's phone call yesterday was this Minister Ho. But now is not the time to tear his face with him. Li Qing thought about it and made a phone call. "Mrs. Ho is not obedient. I told him to report any movement to me, but you dared to hide it from me." Li Qing planned to trick her. "Now, immediately, go to Shanyuan Villa and report to me." Li Qing smiled evilly. After hanging up the phone, Li Qing also rushed to Shanyuan Villa. Because Shanyuan Villa has the best privacy in the whole of Taiwan, There are many dark rooms inside. Seeing the wife of Minister Ho who had been waiting for a long time, Li Qing started a big fight with her. After a long time, Li Qing smoked a cigarette. Really? Really not. I am sure that between 9 and 10 o'clock yesterday, he was reading the newspaper in the living room. I was sitting next to him and did not receive any calls. Zhao Muten looked aggrieved. Li Qing patted his forehead. It seems that the so-called big shot is someone else. Forget it, if there is no, then there is no to compensate you, do it again. Zhao Muten opened her mouth in surprise, as if to say, you call this compensation? Helpless, since I can't refuse, I'll just enjoy it. As the voting date gets closer, it's just as Li Qing expected. Ding Zongshu began to use Zhou Caoxian's identity to make a fuss. He even said on TV that Zhou Chaoxian was a gangster and a murderer. Of course, the fact that Zhou Caoxian's wife was a Singaporean dancer was also exposed. For a time, the crowd was excited and scolded Zhou Chaoxian. Mr. Li, really don't clarify now. I'm afraid it will be too late to clarify later, Zhou Chaoxian asked Li Qing across from him a little anxiously. Mr. Zhou, why are you in a hurry? Let the public opinion fly for a while, Li Qing said confidently while smoking a cigarette. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 165. There is a story that I think you should listen to. Li Qing smiled. Zhou Chaoxian also sat down, looked at Li Qing curiously and asked, Mr. Li, tell me about it. He didn't know what Li Qing was trying to be mysterious about, but the idea was Li Qing's, and he should really listen to Li Qing's advice. There was an old man who took the bus. There was no empty seat on the bus, but no one stood up to give him a seat. There was a young man wearing sunglasses on the seat for the disabled, which made the old man very dissatisfied. You are so young and you don't give up your seat for the elderly. The young man picked up his bag and stood up after hearing it. Uncle, please sit down. It was not until the young man stood up that the old man realized that the young man's legs were prosthetic limbs. Then he took out a cane from his bag, and everyone knew that the young man was blind. When he took the cane, a retired soldier's certificate accidentally fell out of his bag. Li Qing didn't say anything more here, because Zhou Chaoxian was a smart man and naturally understood the intention of Li Qing's story. The continuous reversal not only made the people feel guilty, but also made them extremely dissatisfied with Ding Zongshu, and even disgusted with him. Your asset disclosure book is a prosthesis, your wife's change is sunglasses, and Ding Zongshu's evidence of drug trafficking is a retirement certificate. Do you understand what I said? Li Qing almost taught him how to do it. If he still doesn't understand, there is no way. Zhou Chaoxian was overjoyed. He finally knew why Li Qing asked him to wait. The greater the emotional pull, the stronger the guilt, and the greater the support for Zhou Chaoxian. I understand, Mr. Li is a great talent. Li Qing heard Zhou Caoxian's compliment and chuckled. In the previous life, short videos were already popular. Zhou Chaoxian hurried back to make arrangements, mainly because he had to think about how to say his wife's words. 2 days later, on TV, Li Qing looked at Zhou Chaoxian, who had superb acting skills, and nodded. On TV, Zhou Chaoxian held up the asset certification, saying that he was no longer involved in the underworld industry, and cried bitterly, saying that he had turned over a new leaf. I want to contribute to Wanwan and do my best for the development of Wanbei. His wife's words later are also noteworthy. Dear elders, I have a bad background, I admit it. I regret it very much. Chaoxian knows all this, but he has never despised me. Yes, he was once a gangster boss, but who doesn't have a past? I hope everyone will give him a chance, believe that he can change me, and he can change the development of Wanbei. Crow looked very moved while watching TV. Li Qing thought he was moved by Zhou Caoxian's wife's words. Crow, You are crazy. He was about to tell Crow the truth. Brother, support me in running for election. Li Qing asked a question directly. Crow continued, I often ask Connor to become a good person, and I think I have the ability to make Wanbei develop better. Crow's dirty words made Zhang Dongxiu, who was eating melon seeds next to him, sprain his waist. Get away. Li Qing slapped his forehead helplessly. What the hell? He had to ignore Crow and continue watching Zhou Caoxian's election propaganda on TV. But later, Zhou Chaoxian directly brought out the evidence of Ding Zongshu's drug trafficking, which became the key to Ding Zongshu's election failure. In the previous life, I felt that Zhou Chaoxian was very rough in doing things, and directly killing Ding Zongshu would only make things more complicated. Exposing Ding Zongshu's drug trafficking, there are many people who want to kill him. Sure enough, as Li Qing guessed, Ding Zongshu's drug trafficking became the biggest scandal in the entire election. Not only did he have no hope of being elected, but he also lowered the public support rate of the entire Blue Party. The legislative election was held as scheduled, and Zhou Chaoxian was elected as the West District Legislative UN with a high vote of 121,100 votes. Ding Zongshu came to Shanyuan Villa in a state of despair. In the dark room, Minister Ho had been waiting for a long time. Ding Zongshu, you actually sold drugs without telling me. Do you want to die? Do you know how serious this matter is? Minister Ho scolded Ding Zongshu. This time Ding Zongshu got into trouble, and the boss scolded him, which made him very angry. I thought I could move my position, but now it seems that it is impossible. Minister Ho, I was wrong. Boss, do you know everything? Ding Zongshu said with a sad face. He knew that his only way to survive was to hope that the boss would show mercy. I will pay a very high price, Minister Ho, please help me. How high? Higher than the sky? Ha ha. Minister Ho clapped his hands, and several bodyguards with guns came in and pointed at Ding Zongshu. Boss means that you stay in Shanyuan Villa and don't go out. By the way, use the columbarium you bought last time. Ding Zongshu never thought that the columbarium he bought at the charity sale last time would be used on himself. Ho! The gunshot sounded, and Ding Zongshu slowly fell down. Li Qing walked out of another room. In fact, he had been here a long time ago. It was Minister Ho who deliberately invited him to watch this show. Li Qing smiled playfully, and now it seems that he is trying to warn him. Tisk tisk, what a pity. Looking at Ding Zongshu's body, Li Qing shook his head. Haha, it's not a pity. There are many candidates like him. Minister Ho said meaningfully. He always felt that he couldn't see through this wealthy Li Qing, so he had to call him here to perform a show of killing a chicken to scare the monkey. Minister Ho is right. After the bodyguards carried the body out, Li Qing casually stuffed a check into Minister Ho's hand. Minister Ho looked at the number on the check, narrowed his eyes, and pointed his finger at Li Qing. You, haha, what's the matter? He knew that Li Qing must have something to ask for. Minister Ho, I'm interested in Ding Zongshu's business. Li Qing's words made Minister Ho stunned. Drug trafficking. Minister Ho stroked the check in his pocket. If Li Qing really said drug trafficking, he would immediately return the check to him. How is it possible? Everyone in Hong Kong knows that New World doesn't touch flour. And they hate this thing. Li Qing chuckled. Then he said, what I want is Ding Zongshu's taxi passenger transport business. This was what Li Qing had planned long ago. As long as he took over Ding Zongshu's taxi passenger transport business, he could firmly grasp the entire taxi passenger transport business in Bay North. Minister Ho was stunned when he heard this, and then he breathed a sigh of relief. This matter was not a problem for him. After all, Ding Zongshu was already dead. As long as Li Qing pays a little money, he can go to the Ministry of Commerce to make arrangements, and it's almost certain to win. What makes him curious is that although the passenger transport business is profitable, it is not so outstanding compared to the profitable business of Li Qing's subordinates. But he didn't think much about it, as long as he didn't touch D. Okay. Ding Zongshu is dead, and his taxi passenger transport business cannot be left unaccepted. You can go and acquire it, and I will arrange it for the Ministry of Commerce. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 166. When Li Qing took over the entire Wanbei taxi passenger transport. On the other side, Zhou Chaoxian was also very proud and happily swore in with other elected legislators. 2 days later, the New World Manga Hall. Great, I didn't expect Mr. Li to take down such a tough bone. Zhou Chaoxian walked around Li Qing's office, looking up and down. You know, manga is full of local people in Wanwan, and it is very difficult to make it all the same. I didn't expect that a gang from the outsiders in the New World would actually beat manga into a hole. It is said that the taxi passenger transport company inside played a big role. It seems that Li Qing is playing a big game. Mr. Zhou, thank you. Congratulations on your successful victory in the West District Legislative UN. Li Qing sat in his seat and said while making tea. Zhou Chaoxian has been making constant moves these 2 days, looking like he is pleading for the people, and he has begun to emerge in the political arena of Wanbei. This time, Li Qing specifically asked him to come here so that he could contact other legislators with gangster identities so that they could get to know each other. He also invited the famous underworld bosses in Wanbei and planned to hold a Wanbei underworld gathering. It was a bit like a meeting. One was to announce that New World had officially established a foothold in Wanbei. The other was to show power to deter the scoundrels. Li Qing told him his thoughts, and Zhou Chaoxian nodded in agreement. I heard that Wanwan has already started preparing for the 3 purities, named the Hyping Project, so you should be careful too. Zhou Chaoxian looked at Li Qing and said. The two were in a cooperative relationship, and he was very grateful to Li Qing. He came to tell Li Qing as soon as he heard the news. And he felt a little embarrassed that he had left the underworld business to Li Qing. Hearing this, Li Qing bowed his hands and thanked him. Thank you, I have my own plan. He was not afraid of the 3 purities in Wanwan at all. If it didn't work, he still had the handles of those high-level officials in his hands. The other party was definitely not willing to fight to the death. Seeing that Li Qing was prepared, Zhou Chaoxian didn't say anything. After saying goodbye to Li Qing, he began to contact other legislators. Li Qing asked Zhang Dongxiu to contact the big guys from all over Wanbei. Monday, a hot spring manor in manga. Li Qing directly brought the conversation mode of Hong Kong to Wanbei, but the location was changed from a bathhouse to a hot spring. Watching the last gang leader, under the service of the young lady, take off his clothes and jump into the hot spring. This time, except for Lei Gong of the Sanlian gang, basically all the gangs that had sent invitations were very respectful and all attended. In fact, Li Qing also sent an invitation to Lei Gong, but he didn't dare to come. Mr. Li, this method is good. The whole body is clean and there is no need to worry about the police monitoring at all. Some small gang leaders complimented. Li Qing smiled and said nothing. Now Li Qing has a little bit of the meaning of the alliance of Qi Huanggang, one of the 5 hegemons in the spring and autumn period. From today on, the gangs in Wanbei will recognize the New World, a gang from the outside. In the hot spring, the faces of the big guys were more or less unnatural. Because not far away from them stood the fully armed and loaded New World brothers. The New World brothers were paying attention to the movements around them. Not to mention the police, even birds could not fly in. Boss Li, I haven't congratulated you on taking over manga yet. This hard bone was finally gnawed by you. Luo Fu of the Tiandao League came to Li Qing and said with a smile. As soon as Luo Fu spoke, the atmosphere was much more relaxed. Others also began to chat in twos and threes. Haha, Mr. Li is very courageous, and I admire him too. Feng Xiao, the leader of the Sihai gang, also smiled. This was the first time Li Qing had seen Feng Xiao. This Feng Xiao didn't look like a gangster boss, but rather like a teacher, wearing gold-rimmed glasses and being gentle. Boss Feng, you are too kind, Li Qing replied with a chuckle. Pa-Pie Li Qing clapped his hands to attract everyone's attention, and they all stopped talking and looked at him. The purpose of calling everyone here this time is very simple. I heard that most of your weapons are shipped from Southeast Asia. Li Qing took a pistol from Luo Fu's younger brother and disassembled the pistol in an instant in the surprised eyes of everyone. Look, this is the pistol you use. The barrel of the gun was severely worn, and it was a second-hand product at a glance. You are lucky not to explode in a gunfight with such a pistol. Everyone looked at the rifling, and as Li Qing said, it was seriously worn. If it goes wrong, the next bullet will explode. Take a look at this Markov pistol made in the former Soviet Union, it's brand new. Li Qing took the Markov pistol from his younger brother, opened the safety, pulled the trigger, and immediately made a crisp and pleasant empty sound. After speaking, he handed the pistol to the big guys to pass around. The gun exuded the smell of gun oil, and it was a new gun at a glance. You should know that this kind of gun was the standard for middle-level officers in the Soviet Union. Are you interested? Li Qing said as he looked at the big guys who were constantly groping for the gun excitedly. After hearing this, the bosses realized that Li Qing's purpose was to sell arms. Boss Li, what's the price? Luo Fu said at the right time. Li Qing's eyes lit up, it must be a little expensive. After all, it's the original Soviet Union, not a replica. You know, the price of replicas on the black market has reached more than $200. All the bosses nodded in agreement. The pistols produced by small workshops in Southeast Asia are $200 each, and they are humming second-hand goods. Mr. Li, please tell us the price. If it's suitable, we will consider it. Only $300 for one gun. Li Qing held up 3 fingers. The big guys took a deep breath and made a contribution to global warming. Seeing the expressions of the big guys, he spread his hands helplessly and said, after all, it's not easy for us to transport it here, and there are a lot of losses in the middle. This is already a conscience price. Such a high price made the big guys calm down and silently calculate how many guns they could buy. Okay, Brother Li, give me 100 guns. Luo Fu saw the scene was deserted and spoke quickly. Okay, Boss Luo is straightforward and will take 1/5 of my goods at once. I'll give you 20% off. Li Qing said. When many small gangs heard this, they all started shouting, you 10 guns, I 10 guns. Especially some small gangs with hostile relations, when they heard the other side buying, they gritted their teeth and bought a few guns. 500 guns were bought in just a few minutes. This made Li Qing very happy. He just used this gun to test the water. According to Tian Yangshan's report, this refurbished gun only costs a few $dozen in the hands of the Japanese. It is a huge profit. To be honest, the advantages and disadvantages of the Markov pistol are very obvious. The advantages are high accuracy and low recoil. As for the disadvantages, it is nothing more than low power. Well, Li Qing tried and it couldn't penetrate the bulletproof vest. This is not a battlefield. This small disadvantage can be ignored. Li Qing doesn't need to bring it up. After all, not every gang wears bulletproof vests. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Banwan Qing Bulletin Liang. Chapter 167. After this gathering, New World was not only a gang from other provinces, but also became the spokesperson for arms dealers. What surprised Li Qing was that Tiandao Li Gluo Fu took the initiative to give up Chengdu Road in Ximending. Of course, the condition was to enjoy a 10% discount on arms purchased from New World. Up to now, New World has taken over 3 roads and 1 street in Ximending: Chengdu Road, Xining South Road, Kunming Street, Kongding Road, and the entire Manga. Only Zonghua Road and Hankow Road are left, but now it is not suitable for blatant expansion of territory. Because Taiwan's peace project has been quietly launched, Li Qing decided to take people to Ukraine. After all, if you want to do arms business, this trip is a must. Li Qing handed over the affairs of Taiwan to Monk and Mosquito, and F3 was sent to Hejiang. The gambling boat was almost completed, and He Min was also short of manpower. He only took Zhang Dongzhou and Crow to Ukraine, that is, the legendary Mao who inherited part of the Soviet legacy. When it comes to Ukraine, the impression that this country gives Li Qing is that it plays a good hand badly. There are 400,000 square kilometers of black soil alone. If they don't do it, the people will not starve even if they rely on the weather. This is secondary. The most important thing is that Mao has strong military and industrial capabilities, and has inherited 3,594 Soviet defense industry units. Such capabilities can even be ranked in the world. Li Qing also saw this point and chose to let Tian Yangsheng take a trip. When the few people arrived in Ukraine, it was a northern scenery, with snow everywhere. Wearing a fox fur coat, walking out of the airport, especially Crow, who was dressed like a bear, swaying when walking. Not handsome at all when wearing a black leather jacket. Big brother, this is too cold. This weather made Crow, who had never seen snow a few times, extremely unbearable. More than 30 degrees below zero, what do you think? Li Qing replied indifferently. Zhang Dongzhou also smacked his lips. He had never been to such a cold place. Hey, Dongzhou, look, I'm as big as you, Crow said, swaying like a penguin. Damn, Erbai. Zhang Dongzhou no longer paid attention to Crow, who was wearing 2 layers of coats, and hurried to catch up with the big brother in front. As soon as he left the airport, he saw Tian Yangsheng and others, looking around and waving at Li Qing and others. Li Qing also smiled and walked forward. Tian Yanji and others quickly took the luggage from Crow and Zhang Dongzhou. Big brother. Tian Yangsheng shouted respectfully. Let's go, Yangsheng, talk while we walk. On the way to the residence, Tian Yangsheng briefly told the big brother Li Qing about the current situation in Mao. The current political situation in Mao is unstable, the people live in poverty, and the soldiers can't even get their salaries. Moreover, corruption is rampant here, and underground organizations are everywhere. Tian Yangsheng's former boss, General Dimish, the garrison officer of Odessa, was a Soviet hero who made great contributions to the former Soviet Union. But with the fall of the Berlin Wall, all the merits became a bubble. Li Qing could still see some memories of the Soviet Union through the car window, the fallen statue of Lenin, the occasional Red Army soldiers passing by, the broken and rusty sickle and hammer logo. But everything seemed so desolate. This was the end of an empire. Brother, I don't understand why such a powerful country would fall. Tian Yangsheng looked at his boss looking out the window and asked the question that had been hidden in his heart for a long time. No reason, it's just because the earth is too small. Humans will die in their own hands sooner or later. Li Qing murmured. No one would have thought that the people on this land would fight with the brothers next to them decades later. It must be said that the infiltration of the West is very clever here. After driving on the muddy road for a long time, they arrived at the residence of Tian Yangsheng and others, a large farm. The group got out of the car and walked into the house. As soon as they entered the house, Crow was shocked by the warmth in the house. The inside and outside of the house are simply not the same season. Ah, brother, I won't come again in this weather, Crow muttered in a low voice. Next time, I won't ask you to come. You've been so long-winded. Zhang Dongzhou took off his coat and hung it on the hanger, looking at Crow with contempt. A grown man is so afraid of the cold, even worse than the children of the traders. Li Qing ignored the quarrel between the two and talked with Tian Yangsheng to learn about General Dimish. Dimish made great contributions in the Patriotic War, especially in the Battle of defending Odessa, killing more than 10,000 Nazis. He was awarded the rank of lieutenant general and is now the top leader of the Odessa army. Now the whole traders are full of corruption, and Dimish has to go with the flow under the pressure of life. There are mountains of guns and ammunition in the warehouse, and arms dealers from various countries have flocked here, which is why Tian Yangsheng asked Li Qing to come early. If it's late, there may be some rags left. Li Qing chuckled and said, soldiers who are short of money, warehouses full of arms, and impatient arms dealers, haha. What's more, Odessa has more than one arsenal. Now Li Qing is considering the sales of these arms. Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Southeast Asia can't possibly take in so many arms. Tapping his temple with his index finger, Li Qing had no idea. How much he could take in and how much he could sell would be discussed tomorrow. Well, I know the general situation. Now tell me about your situation. Is there enough money? Li Qing asked with concern. Tian Yangsheng's eyes flashed with a touch of emotion when he heard this. Brother, it's enough. I bought this farm directly, and it didn't cost much. Li Qing learned that Tian Yangsheng not only bought this farm, but also recruited some war orphans for training. Mercenaries. A good choice. In fact, Li Qing had this idea a long time ago, but before he could implement it, Tian Yangsheng actually coincided with Li Qing's idea. This made him very happy. After all, some things cannot be solved through gangs, and it would be much more convenient to have your own mercenaries. Well, at least half of them are of Chinese descent and must know Chinese. Li Qing made a request. Tian Yangsheng nodded and planned to recruit more children with Chinese descent according to the boss's request in the next step. After talking for a while, everyone started to eat together. They were all Chinese, so of course this meal was also Chinese. This disappointed the crow, who was a little curious about Mao's diet. Brother Crow, after dinner, I'll take you to a good place. There's a lot of exciting shows. Tian Yanji winked at Crow. Crow was immediately excited, feeling full of energy, and not feeling cold at all. He finished eating in a few bites, and couldn't wait to pull Tian Yanji out. Dongzhou, go have some fun too. Anyway, your little lawyer isn't here, Li Qing said with a smile. Zhang Dongzhou heard this, hesitated, and chased after him. Zhang Dongzhou, what are you doing here? Crow looked at Zhang Dongzhou behind him, showing an annoyed expression. Brother asked me to watch you, Zhang Dongzhou said righteously. I get angry when I see you, just like the monitor who collected homework in my first grade of elementary school. Zhang Dongzhou, don't follow us. Okay, let's go. Tian Yanji tried to smooth things over. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Bulletin Liang. Chapter 168. Tian Yanji drove for a long time before arriving at an inconspicuous bar in downtown Odessa. The style of the bar is typical Soviet style, practical, durable but not beautiful. Go, I can't wait. Crow rubbed his cold hands and said excitedly. Dongzhou, I heard from Yanji that there are serious dances without clothes here. Crow raised his eyebrows at Zhang Dongzhou. He didn't believe that Zhang Dongzhou was Lu Ziawei, who could keep his chastity for the young lawyer. Zhang Dongzhou looked serious and followed Tian Yanji into the bar. Tisk hypocritical. Crow wrinkled his nose and muttered softly. The three of them walked into the bar. As soon as the door was opened, a wave of heat hit them. Unexpectedly, the small bar was crowded. Men and women were dancing wildly on the dance floor, and the DJ on the stage was a blonde girl. What made Crow excited was that the girl was wearing nothing on her upper body, holding her clothes and shaking them constantly. The huge round body bounced like a rabbit. This is heaven. Crow and others knew that foreign countries were open, but they didn't expect it to be so open. Even Zhang Dongxiu, who had a serious face, had a dazed look. These big horses are good. Good brother, this place is good, I like it. Crow hugged Tianyanji hard and said loudly. Tianyanji took out a stack of US dollars and handed it to Crow and Zhang Dongxiu. In Ukraine now, US dollars are absolutely hard currency. Brother Crow, as long as you have this, pick it up. Tianyanji pointed at the blonde girl who was twisting wildly on the dance floor. Crow took the US dollars and walked directly to the dance floor. Zhang Dongxiu and Tianyanji came to the bar and planned to drink some wine first. After all, picking up girls also requires brewing emotions, right? Otherwise, what's the difference between them and Crow? Crow walked into the dance floor and began to look for a target. Not long after, he found a Ukrainian girl with a curvy and blonde hair. Hi, how much? Crow showed the banknotes in his hand directly. No way, he only knew Dutch. The girl opposite glanced at Crow, smiled contemptuously, and turned away. Crow still coveted the other's key parts, well, mainly because the milk was enough to feed him. Seeing the blonde girl was about to leave, he stepped forward and pulled her. The blonde girl angrily shook Crow away and scolded him loudly, but Crow didn't understand Russian. Main. Crow waved the US dollars in his hand. I don't know when, a few bald men surrounded Crow, and they were not good people at first glance. There are bodyguards. Seeing the situation, Crow slowly retreated, mainly because he didn't have a gun on him, and he would definitely suffer in a fight. He also looked around, looking for Zhang Dongxiu's trace. Damn it, where have you been? Looking at the bald man who was slowly surrounding him, Crow was a little anxious. If he got beaten up in the bar, he would be embarrassed in front of his big brother when he returned. Hey, I warn you, don't go too far, I know Kung Fu. Crow took a stance and kept shouting Ada. But the few people were not intimidated, but rushed up and started to beat Crow violently. Crow was no match for 6 hands. The only thing he could do was to protect his handsome face. The commotion in the dance floor quickly attracted Zhang Dongxiu's attention. Tianyanji smiled and said, there are fights in bars every day in Ukraine, and everyone is used to it. Zhang Dongxiu nodded and looked at it with interest. Sure enough, there are such situations in bars in every country. Tisk tisk, 3 people beat one, look at the child being beaten, and he kept crying. Tianyanji watched the show and commented on the side. Zhang Dongxiu felt something was wrong when he heard the familiar shouting. This voice is very familiar, Crow. Zhang Dongxiu picked up the vodka bottle on the bar and ran over. Tianyanji was stunned for a moment, then reacted and rushed over with the bottle. Zhang Dongxiu didn't say anything, and he slapped one of the bald men in the face, and the man fell to the ground. The other 2 saw that the situation was not right, and they didn't care about beating Crow anymore, and they stood up and rushed towards Zhang Dongxiu. Zhang Dongxiu didn't tolerate it either, and directly pinched the necks of the 2 men with one hand, lifted them up, and then threw them to the ground. At this time, Tianyanji came late and joined the fight with a bottle. The dance floor became more chaotic, and some men and women were not afraid of trouble, screaming and cheering. But the fight didn't last long, mainly because Zhang Dongxiu's martial arts value was too strong, and he knocked the opponent down in a few moves. Zhang Dongxiu, you watched me get beaten and didn't help me. I'll go back and tell the boss. Crow was helped up by Tianyanji and looked at Zhang Dongxiu angrily. Zhang Dongxiu was very upset. He didn't recognize Crow at first. The 3 big men surrounded him too tightly. Really, you cause trouble wherever you go. The big brother will scold you first when he finds out. Crow rubbed his arm that was hurt by the beating and said nothing. What's going on? Why did you get beaten? Tianyanji asked curiously. Crow was also depressed. He just flirted with the young lady, but he didn't expect that she had bodyguards. He looked around and didn't find the young lady. He didn't know where she ran off to. Ask them. I don't know why they beat me. Crow pointed at the three big men lying on the ground. Tianyanji squatted down and spoke in Russian to the one with the less serious injuries. A few minutes later, Tianyanji looked at Crow helplessly. He said, you harassed the daughter of the boss. Crow was about to say something. That's him. The blonde girl, with several policemen behind her, pointed at Crow and shouted. Zhang Dongzhou slapped his forehead when he saw this. The police are here, and now he's in trouble. So the people who fought were taken back to the police station. What? You said she's not yet an adult. Crow pointed at the blonde girl opposite in surprise. Tianyanji spread his hands. Brother Crow, her ID card shows that she's 16 years old. You're harassing an underage girl. Damn, I don't believe it. She has so much milk, and you told me she's only 16. Crow's angry tone was filled with resentment. How can a 16-year-old drink alcohol? How can a 16-year-old go to a bar? How can a 16-year-old dress so revealingly? It's unreasonable. But the fact is that, and only then did he know what it meant to say that one should not judge a person by appearance. Damn, next time you flirt with a girl, you should check her ID card first. Not long after, Li Qing brought Tianyangsheng to the police station and bailed out Crow and the others. After all, it was just a fight. For Ukraine now, it was nothing more than paying a little more fine. Brother, believe me, I really didn't know she was underage, Crow explained beside Li Qing. Yeah. Brother, your answer is so perfunctory. Get lost. Li Qing was not angry about Crow causing trouble. The other party was not particular. He didn't do anything wrong, but he beat Crow violently. It was too much. The group just walked out of the police station. They saw several bald men with beards staring at them with ill intentions. Brother, it seems to be the skinhead gang of the local gang. Tianyangsheng whispered in Li Qing's ear. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 169. The blonde girl also walked out of the police station at this time. When I saw one of them, a 1.9-meter tall bald man with a beard, I ran over happily. Li Qing squinted his eyes. It seemed that the local gangs had a close relationship with the Ukrainian police. Tianyanji's expression was also a little ugly. He knew about the local skinheads, but he didn't know that the blonde girl was the daughter of the skinhead leader. Things are going in a bad direction. Li Qing chuckled and walked over with Tianyangsheng and others. It was really interesting that he had a conflict with the local gang on the first day he came to Ukraine. Who are you? How dare you harass my daughter? The bearded man stepped forward and asked. The boys behind him were all touching the guns on their waists. Tianyangsheng quickly translated to Li Qing. Sorry, we just came here, no offense intended, it's all a misunderstanding. Li Qing chuckled, neither humble nor arrogant. No matter what happened in this matter, it was my younger brother who was at fault first, and we must recognize this truth. Tianyangsheng and others secretly reached for the firearms at their waists, and Tianyanji also secretly handed the gun to Zhang Dongzhou. The other party didn't speak, just stared at Li Qing closely, and the atmosphere gradually became serious. Let's go. The bearded man looked at his girl and got into the car with his younger brother. Li Qing's expression changed slightly, get in the car and go back. It seemed that the other party did not intend to reconcile, especially since Luo Hu looked at him deeply before leaving. Brother, it seems that the other party is not ready to be kind, Tian Yangshen whispered behind Li Cheng. Now, just a few years after Ukraine broke away from the Soviet Union, the political situation is turbulent. These gangs are also lawless, and even the local police are somewhat helpless against them. Li Cheng nodded, be careful on the way back. The group got into the car and started driving towards the farm. I'm so stupid, really. I only knew that people with big breasts develop better, I didn't know that a 16-year-old could develop like this. Crow said depressedly in the car. I originally came out to flirt with her this time, but I didn't expect that she got into trouble. The local gangs are not particular about it. They don't even touch their butts. What are they doing? If I had known earlier, I would have done it first, since there is enough time anyway. Li Cheng has black hair and crows, and she has become Xionglin's wife. Okay, it's okay. We're going to leave after discussing business. It's just for healthcare. You should be careful in the future. Li Cheng instructed. Brother, don't worry, we are not easy to bully. Tian Yangshen patted the pistol on his waist. Indeed, Tian Yangshen's secret power is no worse than that of the skinheads, but it has not been exposed yet. The baby soldiers he trained alone were not that easy to deal with. Crow should be more cautious in everything he does in the future. Look at Dongxiu. Li Cheng used Zhang Dongxiu to enlighten the crow again. Crow glanced at Zhang Dongxiu resentfully, the boss would always compare this piece of shit with me. Brother, let me tell you, Dongxiu is the worst thing. Seeing me being beaten, he actually watched the show. Brother, something is wrong. Tian Yangshen, who was driving, looked in the rearview mirror and interrupted Crow's words. The car behind us has been following us for a long time. After Tian Yangshen finished speaking, everyone became alert and quickly picked up their guns. While he was talking, the car behind suddenly accelerated and hit the rear of the car. Wu Wu and the others were not hesitant, they just raised their guns and started shooting at the back. Especially Tian Yanji took out an AK from under the car seat and started shooting at the rear window. Not to be outdone, the people in the car on the other side also began to draw their guns and fight back, not daring to get too close. And there is no spear, so the firepower is not as powerful as Li Cheng's. It wasn't until they reached the fork in the road that the other party knew there was nothing they could do against Li Cheng and his party, so they fired a few more shots before leaving. Haha, foreign gangs are really interesting. Such a trivial matter can cause such a big deal. Li Cheng raised his eyebrows and looked at the vehicle on the other side of the rearview mirror. Brother, it may be a white supremacist organization similar to the Ku Klux Klan. Tian Yangshen explained. Today's Urmazi have been invaded by Western ideas. Some people's ideas, especially those of young people, are deceptive to Westernization. Especially after the breakaway, Urmazi also tried his best to move closer to Europe. The Slavs are still in charge now. In the end, Jews or others may directly control the Urmao political scene. That's why the local gangs have no scruples. They will kill Asians and bury them somewhere without anyone knowing. After all, the current Urmao police force is ineffective. It's not easy for the yellow people here now, whether they're Japanese, Korean, or Vietnamese. Tian Yangshen said softly. This is also the reason why Tian Yangshen recruited some orphans here, not only to strengthen his own strength, but also to protect them. Li Cheng nodded upon hearing this, his eyes flashing, check out the details of this gang. Crow licked his tongue excitedly, before his boss was shot coldly and refused to return. Others were also stroking the guns in their hands, with bloodlust in their eyes. They had not killed anyone for a long time. The next day, Li Cheng followed Tian Yangshen to meet with General Dimmock. Li Cheng looked around at the reception room. It was a typical Slavic architectural style, with coordinated proportions and solemnity. He smiled and said, "I hope General Dimmock is not as old-fashioned as the decoration of this room." Not long after, a man wearing a grass-green military uniform with 2 general stars on his shoulder straps walked in. He is not as tall as other Slavs, but a little fat. Tian Yangshen immediately stepped forward to salute, and then introduced Li Qing to him. Li Qing also extended his hand enthusiastically and greeted him. Of course, he needed Tian Yangshen's translation. "General Dimmock, I need a lot of arms, and I hope to get help from you," Li Qing said straight to the point. "Now that the Cold War has just ended for a few years, I am afraid that the arms here are piled up like a mountain." "Mr. Li Qing, you know, I still have a boss," Dimmock said hesitantly. "Recently, arms dealers from all over the country have rushed to Ukraine, and it is not just 1 or 2 who have found him." "Boss? Who?" "They are all busy dividing up the Soviet Union's legacy, and your soldiers can no longer pay their salaries." Li Qing went to the point. Dimmock knew that only those with military power had power. If the soldiers retired because of no salary, he, the general, would become a decoration. Li Qing looked straight at the other party. In his opinion, this general was not as loyal as he imagined. The general who truly loved the Soviet Union had died for his country. Dimmock's face was solemn. He knew that he had no way out. The garrison commanders in other places were doing the same thing. Because the country had not allocated military funds for half a year. Li Qing picked up the vodka on the table, filled 2 glasses with wine, and picked up the wine glass. Dimmock took a deep breath, picked up the wine glass and clinked it with Li Qing, and drank it in one gulp. Then he picked up a thick book. "Let's go, Mr. Li Qing, I'll take you to see it." Several people took a car to warehouse number 44 and opened the thick alloy door. The piles of guns appeared in front of Li Qing, which shocked him greatly. The guns still exuded the smell of oil and mud. He immediately felt that this was not a gun, but a mountain of gold. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 170. Crow and Zhang Dongxiu looked at the rows of rifles neatly placed in the armory. Their eyes were a little dazed, they had never seen so many arms. Not to mention them, even Tian Yangshen was visiting the armory for the first time, and his face was also surprised. Li Qing walked forward, picked up a gun, and held it in his hand. "Well, it's well maintained, it's a good gun." Dimmock also smiled. "There are a total of 30,000 guns here, and there are probably hundreds of millions of bullets." Li Qing heard this and smiled and grabbed a handful of bullets from the ammunition box. The color of the shell and the bullet was slightly different. He raised his eyebrows and stared at Dimmock. "No, General Dimmock, there are 10,000 guns here, and 100 million reloaded bullets." Li Qing's greed shocked Dimmock. He thought he was just selling at a low price, and Li Qing was making a profit as a middleman, which was already good. Unexpectedly, Li Qing's goal was not just that. Li Qing seemed to see General Dimmock's concerns. "General Dimmock, this way we will both make a lot of money, as long as you do a little work in the statistics table." Dimmock hesitated. He knew that this was against the rules, and if he was found out, he would definitely go to the military court. "No, Mr. Li, I can't make the decision, there will be an inspector to investigate." Dimmock refused. Li Qing stroked the gun in his hand and said indifferently, "Then bring him in, I think he must be willing." Taking advantage of the political instability of Ermao, some people can just salvage a fortune. Anyway, it's all for the country. The current situation is to take the money and go to the United States. Thinking of his wife and children at home, General Dimmock gritted his teeth. "Okay, but I want to settle in US dollars." Now only the US dollar is a hard currency, and only the US dollar can make people feel at ease. Li Qing nodded. "Okay, it's a deal. I want these 10,000 guns and 100 million bullets." Hearing Li Qing's words, his face twitched unnaturally. After discussing the business, Li Qing and Dimich left in a car. Looking at the tanks, armored vehicles, and transport vehicles parked outside the window for a long time, Li Qing secretly smacked his lips. The Soviet legacy is indeed rich. These are basically 90% new. It seems that the slightly older ones have been dealt with. It's just that Li Qing doesn't have a channel to sell these now, otherwise he can sell them directly to Africa and the Middle East, which is even more profitable than selling flour. The 30,000 guns I got now may not be sold through the existing channels, and more channels must be opened up. At noon, several people had a pleasant meal, but the two did not continue to discuss business, but just chatted. General Dimich, if you are willing, if your family wants to immigrate to Hong Kong, Macau, or Taiwan province, I can help. Li Qing knew Dimich's concerns. The only thing he was worried about now was the problem of his family after the incident was exposed. As for whether he can escape, that depends on God's will. After hearing this, Dimich pondered for a moment. In fact, his best choice is the United States, Canada, and Australia are also okay. As for Asia, after all, the races and habits are different, so he still has some concerns. Thank you, Mr. Li, if necessary, I will trouble you then. Dimich declined Li Qing's kindness. Li Qing smiled and didn't care. Not long after, the two finished their meal, and Li Qing and others sent Dimich back to his office. General, someone has been waiting for you for a long time. As soon as he arrived at the door, Dimich's secretary came to tell him. Tian Yangsheng quietly translated in Li Qing's ear. A tall and thin middle-aged man walked over not far away. Li Qing looked at the familiar face in front of him, and suddenly a foreign actor that he particularly liked in his last life came to mind. What a coincidence! Li Qing muttered softly. Yuri? Yuri Orlov? General Dimich exclaimed in surprise. Obviously, he had recognized that this person was his friend's son Yuri Orlov. Uncle Dimich. The two hugged each other. Li Qing's eyes turned, and he immediately gave up the idea of leaving, and asked Tian Yangsheng to drive the car to the side. Dimikai and Yuri walked into the office building together. What? You are dealing in arms now, Dimich said in surprise. Just now, Yuri finished talking about his and his family's experience, and told Dimich about the recent situation, asking for Dimich's help. Uncle Dimich, for the sake of your friendship with my father, you must help me this time, not to mention that you also need money. Yuri said in a low voice. In fact, he came to Ukraine this time with the intention of trying, after all, he and this uncle have no blood relationship. Dimikai smoked the cigarette in his hand, looked at Yuri without saying a word, and didn't know what he was thinking. Yuri became more and more nervous. He received a large order. As long as he could complete it, he, as an arms dealer, would definitely be included in the US government's procurement list and step onto a bigger stage. After all, the world's largest arms dealer is the United States. Dimich thought deeply for a long time. He had already taken a risk. He couldn't take it again in a short period of time. The chance of being discovered was too high. Besides, Yuri wanted more than just a few hundred guns. I'm sorry, Yuri. If you had come a day earlier, we could have negotiated. Now it has been bought by a family. Dimich shook his head. Yuki calmed down immediately after hearing this. He knew that he would definitely come a step later. Yuri gritted his teeth. Can they give me some? After saying this, Yuri regretted it. No fool would share the profits he had obtained with others. If it were him, he would not do it either. After a long time, Yuri walked out of the building in despair. Apart from this uncle, he didn't know who else to go to for such a large number of arms. I am afraid that if the order he took was not completed, he would be directly blacklisted by the order party, and he could only do some small business in the future. Hi, man. Come here. Tian Yangshen waved his hand and shouted loudly. Yuri was stunned for a moment, looked around, and found that the person on the other side was calling him. Me. Come here. Li Qing sat in the car and suddenly found that his subordinates were all foreign language talents. Tian Yangshen could speak Russian, English, and Chinese, Zhang Dongzhou could speak Chinese and Korean, and even his mother Crow could speak Chinese and Dutch. It seemed that he was the only one who knew Chinese. Do I need to learn? Li Qing shook his head and threw the idea in his mind out. Forget it, I'll take a look at the textbooks I've saved and learn some Japanese when I have time. Yuri hesitated for a moment and walked over. My boss has a business to discuss with you. Tian Yangshen opened the car door and invited Yuri in. Hello, I'm Li Qing. Yuri also smiled and said, Hello, Li. I'm Yuri Erlov. He didn't know what business this Asian wanted to discuss with him, so he had to respond politely first. Li Qing looked at Yuri and found that he was very shrewd. I'm sorry to invite you in the car. I have a business to discuss with you, arms business. After listening to Tian Yangshen's translation, Yuri's eyes condensed, his body slightly turned sideways, and looked at Li Qing seriously.